Hello, welcome to natemareflix. I'm Nate. So The Invisible Man drops this week, a much anticipated horror movie that's like to have great performances in it, great scares, and some really good subtext to it. But will it have Kevin Bacon's balls in it? So I'm going to go ahead and explain that intro right off the bat. If you have not seen The Hollow Man, it is of course a take on The Invisible Man by director Paul Verhoeven, who is always very much in your face with his satire and just his way of directing. So that being said, this is a CGI special effects heavy movie, and oddly enough they use a lot of these special effects to show nudity, specifically Kevin Bacon's bits. Yeah, the bacon bits. The balls here, they get shown in thermal vision. They get shown as he's brought back from being an invisible man or turned into an invisible man. In this movie, they have like a serum, and when they inject it in you, you go through the different levels. You know, like the epidermis will slowly disappear. Then you'll have the musculature and all that, your veins, until you get down to your skeleton and eventually nothing. But this movie, at every opportunity, has to show you some Kevin Bacon twig and berries. There's a scene where he's walking around and he's invisible, and they're trying to figure out where he is in the lab, so they put on their thermal glasses, and it's just his dong swaying and, you know, the balls bouncing. It's like, okay, that was interesting, but the fact that they keep doing it is just so weird and so Paul Verhoeven. Know what you're getting yourself into. Thought it was important to put that out there right away, because there's just a whole lot of weird sex stuff in this movie that you are either going to really like this movie or it's going to be very, very off-putting. This is a strange movie to watch in 2020. Yeah, this Dr. Kane character played by Kevin Bacon is the embodiment of a future man to be taken down by the Me Too movement. Yeah, so I guess we'll cover the story before I explain that. You know, Kevin Bacon plays Dr. Kane, a guy who's in charge of a research study being funded by some sort of government agency to help people go invisible and then bringing them back. Of course, this would probably be used by the military, and that would probably be a much more scary, interesting movie, because imagine if the government had agents out there who could just be invisible at any point. You already have those things where you send a joke to a friend in text or email, and you're like, oh, hi, NSA agent, or, you know, government worker who's listening in on this. Now imagine if you had to worry that they're just in the corner and you had no way of knowing. That is far more scarier, has much bigger societal implications than just one cocky Kevin Bacon character being invisible. And the movie even touches on this, so it's kind of weird, because there's a character, even though he's working for this agency, he's like, can you imagine what's going to happen once the government and the military get their hands on this? And it's like, well, yeah, dude, but you work on this. You're no Oppenheimer, you're no Einstein. We didn't go that route. That would have been a more interesting movie if he was really conflicted, if this was Ex Machina like, and he knew he was set and about the destruction of mankind, but he still felt compelled to do it. No, there's no depth. No depth to The Hollow Man. The Hollow Man is hollow. They try to touch on, like, you know, powerful men can get away with anything. There's a lot of sexual assault stuff in this movie. That's definitely the subtext, but it's not really fledged out all that well. For example, once Dr. Kane, played by Kevin Bacon, he finally becomes invisible, the very first thing he does is he grabs two of his female coworkers by the butt. A few minutes later, we get a scene where a woman's in the bathroom and she's about to take her pants off to do her thing, and she's like, is he in here? No, he's not in here, but the camera has to linger there and still show her drop her pants and squat down on the toilet. And there's just more instances of weird stuff that seems like sexploitation in this movie. There's a scene where Kim Dickens' character is falling asleep. Kevin Bacon is still very new to being invisible. This is one of his first actions. It doesn't really take him long at all to descend into being a bad person. You know, we could have had a really interesting conceit here about, you know, like, how would you start to change over time once you didn't have people watching you, you know? This panopticon effect. What if you weren't being, you know, visual, you weren't being scrutinized or surveilled by the public, by your peers? How would your behaviors change? How would your ethics change? We don't get that, because Kevin Bacon's character doesn't really have an arc. He doesn't really have a lot of ethics to begin with. He's not a good guy right from the get-go, and as soon as he turns invisible, he just becomes even more creepy. So that's a way this story could have been better. But yeah, as I was saying, the Kim Dickens character, she's sleeping, and for some reason, not wearing a bra, is wearing like a little tiny sweater, even though she's a super serious, well-paid leading vet in the country who's being trusted by the military. Yeah, see what I'm talking about? But yeah, she's sitting there sleeping. Kevin Bacon's character comes up, undoes her sweater, and starts to suck on her boob. And the camera zooms in and gives us this really weird CGI boob effect to where Verhoeven is like, we have this huge special effects budget. Aren't you curious what it looked like if the Invisible Man sucked on a boob? How a boob would change from mouth suction? We can show that on camera. It's never been done before. Groundbreaking! And instead you're just like, what is happening here? What is this movie? Like, if you were watching that movie and someone just walked in suddenly, you'd be like, what are you doing? And you're like, it's not what it looks like, I swear. This movie has a lot of that. There's a notorious scene with the character played by Rona Mitra where, Kevin Bacon, he leaves the facility against the wills of all the other characters. He leaves the facility. He's out in the world. Could have all sorts of great implications. He could run amok. All sorts of things could happen. Instead, he just rapes a woman that lives across the street from him. And the whole scene, like I said, is just there's a lot of sexploitation here. Very male gazy. The camera shows her breast and that's all it's fixated on. Very intense focus on the breast. And it's just shot weird because, this thing here should be kind of monstrous. But just by casting Rona Mitra and the way it's shot, it just feels skeezy. It seems like you're supposed to be turned on a little bit, but there's nothing sexy about the implications of that scene. It's very off-putting. A lot of stuff in this movie is kind of just makes you scratch your head and go, why, Paul? Why, Verhoeven? Wasn't Showgirls rough enough on you? And I guess not, because he, kind of doubled down in some ways with this movie. I don't want to completely crap on this movie. There is fun to be had, so I'll just make a couple more points about what takes away from this movie. One would just be the characters. The Kevin Bacon character, like I told you, there's no arc there. He's just a douche from the beginning. He's a douche all the way through. All he cares about is sex, and it really hinders what this movie could be. Josh Brolin is obviously a fantastic actor. He's been killing it as of late. In this movie, though, he plays the foil to Kevin Baker's character, and he's just like, if a beige block could talk, the most boring man ever brought to film. Nothing likable about him. You hate every time he's on camera because he's just the epitome of blah. And then Elizabeth Shue's character, she's the best character in this movie. If you're gonna like anybody, it's going to be her. But even then, not really. I mean, you can tell this is a woman written by a man. She's got some really rough dialogue in this movie. Elizabeth Shue does the best she can to be charismatic and overcome it, but she just can't. Like, there's a scene where Josh Brolin's trying to have a really emotional, serious conversation with her in bed, and she just retorts with, my only question is who's gonna be on top tonight? And she just keeps saying stuff like that all through the conversation. I'm like, I don't think the guy who wrote this has ever met a woman. How many women talk like that? There's a lot in this movie that is just so weird. It makes efforts, it strives to say something deeper, but it just comes off so superficial and just void of substance. Like I said, this is a Hollow Man is hollow. So let's talk about what it does well. When not doing weird boob suction stuff or hey, look at Kevin Bacon's balls stuff. These effects are pretty good, especially for 2000. At times I was like, I wish they wouldn't do so many effects. I think it would be more eerie if you just had the actors in an open set, responding to nothing. We don't have to have like the Predator kind of like shiny, hey, there's an invisible guy over here. But I was wrong because when they don't have that, it's very awkward and cringy to watch. Like there's a scene where they're like, where's Dr. Kane? And Elizabeth Shue's like, he's right here. And it's like, oh, okay, this doesn't work. Give me some scenes with the CGI thing. That's much cooler. And it is. They do it well in a lot of ways. There's a scene where he splashes water on his face, and as the water cascades off of his face, the structure of Kevin Bacon's face starts to disappear. It's done pretty well. There's a scene where he gets covered in blood, and it looks like something out of one of your worst nightmares. Very effective, very cool looking. They do some really neat stuff with the transformations here as he kind of, what do you want to say, degrades or evolves into the Invisible Man. They put a tourniquet on a gorilla at one point to test this serum, and you get to see the gorilla go from being invisible to slowly forming back into a visible, full-bodied gorilla. Same goes for Kevin Bacon. Of course, they get his balls in there. There's a scene where Kim Dakin's character literally runs over to a table and yanks the blanket off of him because he's naked under it. That is her whole contribution to the procedure. She runs over and rips his blanket off to make sure that in the wide shot, the camera will be able to see his balls, morph back into fleshy meatballs before he's fully invisible or fully humanized again. There's just weird stuff in this movie. There's no way to beat around the bush. The Hollow Man is just kind of strange, but yeah, when it sets its mind to doing purposeful special effects, it does it really well. It really adds to this action horror, and the action is really good. There's some explosions. There's just some really cool stuff happening in that third act that helps you overcome just how kind of vapid and empty this is otherwise. The melodramatics, they work too. They aid all that action in the third act and help pace this thing along because it would be really stale without it. So, I mean, as you can see, it's not a perfect movie. This is a very flawed movie. This is like a guilty pleasure movie, if anything, but I think it is worth watching. If you haven't seen The Hollow Man, I think it's worth checking out because it's just such a strange little beast that you need to check it out. If you're at a zoo, you'd want to see this thing because there's not a whole lot of things crawling around like The Hollow Man. So you would definitely go over to that exhibit. So on this channel, a 3 out of 5 is the lowest bar for a recommendation. So I'm gonna give The Hollow Man a 3.1. It just makes the cut. It's just weird and bizarre enough to check out. I wish the themes were better. I wish the story was better. I wish the characters were better, but it's not. Like I said, this movie is very hollow. I expect The Invisible Man to be much better when I check that out on Thursday, so be on the lookout for that review. But if you enjoyed this review, please share it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think of The Hollow Man, what your favorite parts are of this movie, and if there are any other movies like this movie, because I can't really think of any. If you have a Hollow Man equivalent, be sure to comment that, because I think I'll be able to check that out because it seems bizarre. However, I have no interest in ever rewatching The Hollow Man 2, so don't comment that. Let's just save our time on that one. But anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Nate for natemareflix saying that's a wrap.